So that, I'm out feeding birds early morning and late evening and sometimes in between. Yes?
So I was going to work the other day, and I live in Mesa, so there's a lot of free space. Anyway, I'm going along, and there is on the top of the fence, great big black shiny, and I thought this speech was coming out, so I thought, oh, I bet you that's a raven. And so it was all by itself, so that would probably mean it really was, huh?
Yeah, I would think it probably was.
I mean, it was
There.
very big, shiny.
He weighs about 3 pounds, almost. 860 grams, I think that's 3 pounds. Maybe it's just 2. But it's a good-sized bird, and he likes taking baths. And you can see it pretty much even here that his feathers are almost iridescent. They're actually, when you lift the feathers on the head and neck, they're actually a gray color base to most of the feathers. And of course, you're all familiar with bird feathers, and I think that's how Velcro was established. They figured out how to...
It was actually from a plant, the Velcro invention.
I'm seeing that the fans are going on, which is going to make us more comfortable. It may make the raven, just watch, if he starts jumping a lot, then we'll have to turn him off. In his younger years, one of the first, it may have been this group or the bird breeders group, that they had a fan going and he got very nervous. So we'll just watch them and see. Ravens lay 3 to 7 eggs. Crows lay 4 to 5 eggs. Ravens are mature at 3 years, crows at 2. The raven babies leave the nest at 5 to 7 weeks. The crow babies leave at 5 weeks. So they're very similar, but the crows seem to be maturing and going on a little faster than the ravens. If you haven't seen it, check out the Mollie, the owl box, the owl cam from San Marcos. You can see it on, she has a, just Google Mollie, the owl, and you'll get it, I'm sure. Yes?
Once they leave the nest, how long do they stay with parents? I noticed that the crow babies stay with parents a long time.
About it, they will stay sometimes a year, but it depends if, on lots of different factors, how much is around. The ravens, I don't think, stay as long. So, yeah.
You mentioned the owl website. There's an eagle up website on the turtle bait eagles,
Okay.
and they have a camera on those chicks. There's 3 of them, which is kind of neat.
Right. You're probably all familiar with Pale Male, the red-tailed hawk in New York City, who has had a website for, or fans for a long time. And now my brother just sent me one from Ohio with the peregrine falcons. So we're getting a lot of people paying attention and learning about our birds and how they can help them. Yes?
When you get your owl box in your yard, they went up and got a baby monitor. They put the camera in the box,
Okay.
watch the bird, and then put where I can see it in the house.
So
So you have your own private.
a less expensive way to do it with a baby monitor to monitor. Yeah, they're great. And you've had some barn owls at your house?
Yeah, we watch them feed the babies and so forth.
Great. I think it's been very helpful for our raptor rehab, particularly because we're seeing, okay, the babies are laid, the eggs are laid every 2 days apart, and then, you know, they're hatching 37 days after the egg is laid, and gosh, mom is already tearing off and feeding the 1-week-old hatchling some of the bits and pieces. She's not regurgitating it, so obviously the birds are able to digest a lot sooner and a lot more than we thought they could. So it's been a tremendously important learning tool for those of us that do rehab and raptor, particularly rehab. Yeah.
Any permits required for ravens?
Absolutely, they're all protected. I carry the permits with me if Fish and Game should pop in here today and say, hey, how come she has that bird, or if I got stopped for speeding. I have the permits in my car, with me at all times when I have a bird.
Crows as well.
Yeah.
You actually have to have a permit just to collect feathers of
Yes.
migratory birds.
Right. You can't just keep them anymore. And feathers, I think, are fascinating. Obviously, living with the bird, I have collected a few. We have long feathers, and then we have the shorts. We have some tiny little feathers, which obviously, if you stop and think about it, having a long feather on the top of his head would look a little bizarre. It would be kind of in the way. So to have little tiny feathers is really neat. And to have feathers of all different sizes and all different shapes. And, you know, the ones for the right and the ones for the left. We have right fingers, we have left fingers. So things that I didn't think about growing up, a feather was a feather, and if you asked me to draw a feather, I would have just drawn a feather, and it would not have been any different. The owl feathers have a different adaptation because their leading wing edge has one that looks like a cone that breaks up the wind so they can fly silently. Ravens don't need that, they're pretty noisy when they fly, but they're beautiful. I think.
Have you ever cut the feathers? Cut his wings?
No, we don't need to with Project Wildlife. They do not have the opportunity to escape, we'll put it that way. The reason he was not releasable was because of the fractured wing. Should he escape, he would probably not necessarily come back, but he would get tired fairly quickly and land at somebody else's feet and say, help me, I can't do this on my own. We've had a couple of birds that came into us through rehab. One was a crow that spent more than a year in Project Wildlife homes because somebody thought it would be fun to have it as a pet. They cut the tail feathers to a point that they, it was just real short. He couldn't fly. He had to wait until he molted all of those feathers. We actually put him on some thyroid medication to help stimulate the growth of the feathers. And he was a fun bird to rehab because he was with us so long, we got some other babies in, and he would help feed those other babies. It was almost like, God, they're so noisy. Let me stuff some food in their mouths and they'll be quiet for a few minutes. And it was quite interesting. He ended up getting released back into the wild. After they've been rehabbed with whatever their injury is, they're then placed in what I call a halfway house, a big flight cage with others of their species, and then they can develop their wild behaviors more efficiently, and then they can get released back out in the wild. So we can see that they are flying well, but no, we don't have to cut their feathers. Our cages all have double doors. I open a door and shut it. Then I open the door where whichever bird I'm going into lives and shut it. So should he manage to get out, he's going to still be confined. His first enclosure was before some of our better policies had gotten into place, and it had a solid wall with a door on that side and no double cage. And I could tell that he'd be right there outside, inside the door when I came. And so the reason one of his first words was perch was because I needed him to go to the perch before I opened the door. And he learned that if he wanted me to come in there, he had to go over there, and then I zipped in the door and shut it. And then he got rewarded, usually with a food reward. We've had fun teaching him new skills. He's got a couple of Project Wildlife volunteers now that come and work with him, and he's learning to get into his transport crate on his own instead of my putting it right in front of his face and his jumping in. And again, it's due to rewards.